Students of Reddit who had a sexual relationship with a teacher. How did it start, and how did it turn out? It started innocently enough. She was my chorus teacher, fresh out of college and only 6 years older than me. My brother was actually dating her friend from high school. I used to cut class and say I had a music lesson, and we'd just hang in the music room, talk about books, music, movies. Then she started complaining about her relationship a lot, needing hugs, which I was more than happy to help with. It eventually turned to making out, and we finally started hooking up when she gave me rides home after school. I honestly felt like Elle found $1 million but couldn't tell anybody about it. It was weird. Then she got weird, asking for her hugs in front of the entire class. I knew everyone knew. I started riding home with my friends again, then she started just showing up at my house. Had a very awkward convo with my dad, who knew exactly what was going on but was so impressed he just kept saying, "Damn, she's pretty." Ghosting hadn't been invented back then, but Elle did the best I could. Eventually she chilled out. A few months later Elle stopped by her room during our normal hang ses time, and she apologized, told me she was just going through a lot with her shitty boyfriend and needed some attention from someone that actually liked her. We didn't talk much after that. Elle graduated soon after, but we're friends on Facebook, and she actually married a decent guy and has a nice family. I'm very relieved we were never found out. It would have been devastating to both of us. Had a crush on one of my grad school teachers for 1.5 years. I was into everything about her. Looks, brain, everything. I ended up teaching the same subject many years later, and I still use the notes and materials from her classes with my own students. She was engaged to someone else, so I never even thought about anything ever happening. It was a nice fantasy. Then out of the blue, she calls my cell phone and tells me that she's thinking of getting into yoga and knows that I am into yoga. So would I get a drink with her and tell her more? I was not exactly experienced with hookups, and I actually took her at her word. I went expecting to talk about yoga and go home afterwards. We ended up getting totally wasted, making out in the middle of a bar, and then I walked her home where I kept saying, "I'm sorry," and "This definitely isn't happening," and "I'll just get you to your door and go home." It did happen, but the joke was on her. She got a few seconds of the worst sex of her life and then got to listen to me in the bathroom for a while. The next day she found me in the hallway and told me that it was a huge mistake and asked me not to tell anyone. Nobody would believe me anyway, so I agreed. I can honestly say I wish the entire thing had never happened. She got married and moved on with her life. I ended up having to take her husband's class before I could graduate. I slept with one of my professors in college. At the time I was 19 or 20, and she was in her mid-30s. I went to see her during her office hours. We talked for a few minutes, and when I went to leave she gave me a long hug and told me, "You give really nice hugs," as she held onto my arms. I asked for her number and went on my way. We exchanged a few flirty text messages over the next few days before she invited me over to her apartment to help her hook up a new TV she had bought. We ended up sleeping together about 10 times before she moved away to take a new job at a different school. Not sure if this counts, but my particular field has a mandatory internship period after graduating college and passing national board exams. During your internship you have a preceptor in charge of guiding you and teaching you the things the books didn't, like physical techniques and state-specific laws. School taught the national curriculum, not the state-unique laws. The preceptor is often a supervisor or manager at the facility that gave you an internship, but could be anyone with a license in the field. Internships are extremely competitive and extremely hard to come by in my area, so I started out doing grunt work at a facility to eventually earn an internship. My preceptor was the supervisor of the firm and more than a decade my senior. During the internship you understandably spend a lot of time together because the intern is not allowed to perform any job duties without supervision. So we had the same schedule, worked on the same projects, and ate lunch together every day. After about 4 months of this, we both come back from holiday break, and as we're catching up we both say we have big news. His news turned out to be that he filed for divorce with his wife. He'd been wanting to for a long time, but talking with me about infidelity finally gave him the push. His ex-wife had cheated on him twice, and he had proof. My news was that I broke up with my long-term boyfriend. I spent the holiday with my sister, who saw I was miserable because my boyfriend wasn't respecting me, and ultimately she gave me the sister talk of, "What are you actually getting out of this relationship?" We both kind of looked at each other and blushed, and went back to eating lunch in a bit of awkward silence. It took another 4 months of awkward brushing up against each other while trying to work, physical job, and veiled flirting before we finally went on a date together. He continued being my preceptor for the remaining 4 months of my internship, and we dated in secret, since he was my immediate superior and responsible for whether I got my license in the field. Then when I got my license, we both went public with the relationship and shortly after moved to a different firm where he was immediately promoted to management, and I was promoted to management within a year. 5 years later, we're both still doing well with the new firm, married, own a house together, and our first baby is due in a month. So mine has a happy ending. My religious studies college professor. She was hilarious and brilliant, and always brought her interests up in class, and they usually aligned with mine. It started off with what felt like on-topic to class discussions, then into more friendly casual conversations about books and movies, then it definitely transitioned into flirting, which was weird because I'm also female and had never had feelings for another girl, so I thought it could just be some weird fantasy in my head and I was just making something out of nothing. Anyways, fast forward, semester ends, I'm out of her class. I submit my final at noon. By 1 p.m., she emails me my final grade and says, "I'm all done submitting your grades, so you're officially no longer my student. Congrats on passing the class and good luck." So I sent back an email with a song attached, and then the emailing went on from there before we officially hung out, which led to sex, which led to a 3-year relationship. We moved in together for about a year, but it ultimately didn't work out cause we wanted different things long term, but we ended on good terms and I'm grateful for the relationship now 5 years out as it helped me realize what I want in a partner. I now have an amazing boyfriend and I heard she recently got married to a woman she started dating after me. I guess I technically had a sexual relationship with a teacher. She was the a-hole for my invertebrate zoology lab, and refused to do anything with me until after the class. After classes, we partied and hooked up quite a lot. After a year of us still being together, other TAs started dating undergrads. 7 years later, we're married and have a kid together. Obviously it worked out for you, but looking back, would you recommend it? I'm the a-hole, M, and matched with one of my old students, F, on a dating app a few months after I taught her. I told her I couldn't because she had been my student, but I looked at the school policies and couldn't find anything. I'd been thinking of reaching out to her again, but I'm not sure. I would highly recommend you start away until you're no longer in control of their grades. There's a significant chance of being accused of favoritism otherwise. If you're not an actual teacher, there's nothing stopping you. I fell in love with the workshop supervisor at my university that guides the workshop that I need for my education. She is about a year older than I am. I am doing some small arts and crafts and leatherworking. She was interested in getting something and she bought something custom. I can't remember how it started out, but for some reason or another, we had some drinks which ended in a night spent together and a sexual relationship. We discovered an attraction to each other. She went to the faculty director with the situation and explained it. Since she cannot give marks on my work and is only a guide in the eyes of the university, they approved of the relationship. That was about 3 years ago. We are still together as I am finishing my education. The relationship moved on from the sexual flirt which it all started with to something deep. We live together for 2 years now, and she helps me something with running the 2 companies that I set up aside my study. When I finish my education next year, I will even propose to her. There was a super hot student teacher that was at our school, so he was only like 22, 23 maybe. Does that count? I was 17 and it was at our graduation dinner when we had snuck a bottle of Passion Pop in, so we were pretty tipsy. I told him I always thought he was hot, and before I knew it his hands were down my pants. We still had about 3 weeks to go before we left school, so spent the next week fucking around the school and nearly getting caught a bunch of times. It was pretty fucking hot to be honest, and I still think about him from time to time. As a person who supervises student teachers, this story gives me anxiety. I don't supervise student teachers and it's making me anxious. Happened to me when I was in 7th grade. She was my conversations teacher. To be honest, she was my first crush, which started when I was in 4th grade. She knew my parents. So, sometimes I had to stay with her when they were late to pick me up from school. It happened 2 months before finals. She told me that she wanted to kiss me and if I was okay with this. I changed my school and she left town some years later. The dilemma is, although I remember times spent with her very fondly, I wouldn't want any other kid to be in this situation as I was in. That happens sometimes, it's shades of gray. She was definitely a predator though. I wouldn't want any other kid to be in this situation as I was in. This is very good point you have made. Similarly, a lot of young kids are doing stupid stuff on TikTok and such. I bet when they grow up, they will find it cringy. It's surprising how we do not know so much about our parents' childhood because there isn't much recorded history of there. But believe me, the kids dancing today on TikTok, when they become a dad, their kids will see it. It's going to be a wild generation that's coming up. Do you have a similar story? Leave a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this one.